This thing's on. Sometimes when I get going, you never know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll start off sitting. My legs get all shaky, eh? Check one. Ani, bonjour. Welcome back. Uh, welcome back to the 13th annual 6 Foot Festival here at the Debajehmujig Creation Center. My name's Ashley Manatwabi,
And next up, we have Jonathan Tauche. Uh, so I just want to give a welcome to Jonathan. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Ashley. It's my honor to be here. I was
Oops.
looking forward to today. I'm just going to grab this mic here. Yes. I'll just introduce myself. Migishi Menado is Banozuan. Wawashkesh Dodum. Um, Wakongkong Donjaba. I am also a Shkabawis, and I walk with the bear. And when I say I walk with the bear, I'm referring to my wife. She's Bear Clan. So, yes, I walk with her daily. And yeah. So, again, I am honored to be here. Also, um, I work for the Wakwamkang Justice Program. I'm the reintegration and Gladu aftercare worker there. I've been there for a little over 2 years. So a lot of my what I'm gonna share today has to do with my work and how I found my purpose in my work through making connections in the community. So I was just wondering where to start today. I was actually thinking about it. I did return to the community in 2015 of Wikwemka, and I just finished the federal prison sentence then, and I was really reevaluating my life, and as to how could I break this cycle. I was very aware of my history. It was just in those few years leading to 2015 that I really started to look at history, not just my own history, but I started to look at my family history, but most of all, our collective history of Indigenous people in Canada. And through that, I found an understanding of myself, but at the same time, I needed to let go of some stuff. And one of the things I did when I returned to the community was start making connections through sacred fires and also through a feather. And this isn't the feather that I received the teaching on, but this is the feather that I just recently received that my wife and I did. And we renewed our vows using this feather. So it means a lot to me, and that's why I thought it would be really appropriate for today. But when I returned to the community in 2015, I needed to, like I said, I needed to change. And I can tell you for sure that Wakwamkong wasn't the first on my list to come back to. I left in 1986. And while I was away for on nearly the 30 years, I lived in various towns in Ontario, northwestern Ontario. I lived in Sudbury. Yeah, so I lived everywhere in between Sudbury and Kenora, and yeah, so I didn't really ever have a place that I called home or that I said that was where I was actually from. But when I did come home in the 30 years that I was gone, I noticed there was quite a change in the community. I know some people might not see that change when they're actually living here, but I was away for a while, and when I left, the dynamics of the community were a lot different. Um, if you think about our powwows back in the 80s, there was always a licensed dance that was accompanied with it on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And there was 49ers at Kings Bay and stuff like that. So the culture around even traditional stuff was. I don't. I guess it was soured. I guess and I remember that as a child, and that powwow wasn't about the dancing or getting connected to your traditional roots. Sure, there was powwows with the drums and the dancers, but as a observer looking from the outside, and as a child as also, I did see that the dynamics of those events were again soured. But when I did return, I did see that there was change in our community. There was a lot of, especially with the powwow, there was no licensed dances at all on the first year I got back. And that was a really big change for me that I noticed. And also, there was a lot of workshops and a lot of cultural workshops as well. And for me, that's, and they were all accessible. So it was really easy to make connections when I attended workshops or teachings or sacred fires. I started out to just attending sacred fires as somebody making an offering, but it wasn't long after that I was sitting around the fire. I was asked if I was able to watch the fire, and yes, I had fire kept before. So, and that's how I started. I started firekeeping. And yeah, so what I do now for work is I'm a Gladue aftercare worker. It's not by chance that I got into the justice field. Um, I spent the majority of my life up until I was about 41, 42 in, I guess, in conflict with the criminal justice system. Uh, Yes, most of those conflicts were my choices. I would have to say all of them were my choices, yes. And yeah, so I wasn't very proud of that, nor am today. And when I returned to the community, I wanted to change that. I wanted to change how prisoners and former offenders are looked at. And one of the things that I thought of was Prisoner Justice Day, which occurred in 2015 and occurs on August 10th of each year, and it's an annual solidarity protest amongst all the prisons across Canada. And so I wanted to do my part to honor that, for because the protest, the small prisoners' justice day protest, is about improving conditions, and it's about acknowledging people that have died in prison from unnatural causes, which is suicide, violence, and neglect. Are those three factors that why there's Prisoner Justice Day. So in 2018, I spearheaded a Prisoners Justice Day. I did get a few sponsors and partners on this, and one of them was Debajehmujig Storytellers. They took care of the technical part, the speakers and the sound system, and also we had Linda speak as well. But also part of those speakers, there was a man who were one of the presenters, and I'm gonna share this story only because it was shared on that day, and it was a public event, and I know the man that I'm who shared the story that day. I know he has he won't mind me sharing this story. So the story goes. Um, so this is what the young man shared. Now this is probably about three or four different people telling this one story. So anyway, if we all remember 1985 in our community of Okwamkong, we had a double homicide and two attempted murders in one day, and it was one person who did that, and that occurred, and there was a big search for him in the community. It took like 10 days. There was army reserves here, and yeah, I was about 11 years old then, maybe 12, and I remember this very like vividly, like I do remember it. um, and this was just before I left Wakamakong. But so anyway, there were kids in the house, and one of the kids in the house was this man who shared the story at Prisoners Justice Day. And so when the offense occurred, the all the kids were taken into care immediately. They were taken like into CAS care, like immediately. They were taken off reserve. They weren't even in the community after that day. But the man in the story who was telling this at Prisoners Justice Day, he was the oldest in the family, and so when his father was going for trial and after he was sentenced, but right from the get go, he was always asking about his dad. He was like, "Where's my dad? Is there a way I can talk to my dad or go see my dad? And his caregivers were telling him, no, you can't see your dad. Your dad's a bad man. Yeah, your dad doesn't love you because he wouldn't have done that stuff if he didn't love you. And so anyway, he didn't believe that, and he really, really pressed his caregivers. And he said he had one or two or three, even three different caregivers in the years up until he was a teenager, because he said he was 13 at the time. And but he kept pressing, like, "Where's my dad? I really want to talk to my dad. You know, I love my dad." And again, he would always get the same answers. No, we're not going to put you in contact with your dad because your dad's a dangerous man. You know, he shot two people. And, there was another person that was a family member that was also injured in that whole occurrence. So, again, it was a very delicate situation. But nonetheless, the oldest son really, really wanted to know, like, what happened to his dad. You know, where's my dad? I really want to know. You know, please let me talk to my dad. But when he turned about 17 or 18, after years of hearing this and after years of asking, he started to believe everything that he was being told, that his dad was a bad man, that his dad didn't love him, that his dad wouldn't have done what he did if he did love him. And so he started to become really resentful. And that's his story. So his dad, I'm going to go to his dad's story now. So his dad, and this was told by an elder who had worked with his dad in the prison. And then it was relayed to a community member. So an elder in the prison, by his account, he said that when this man got to prison, he ended up getting 2 life sentences and a bit more than that. And he was at the Kingston Penitentiary. And I guess as soon as he got there, he accessed the elder right away. He accessed the elder and said, "Yeah, need some support here, right?" So through the years that they had contact, the man who committed the offense, he started participating in ceremonies, sweat lodges, sharing circles, and he became that elder's skabewis, which means he became his helper. And when that elder wasn't on site in Kingston Penitentiary, um, all all the other Indigenous men, and even non-Indigenous men, accessed this man because of his knowledge and because of how much they respected him, and about how much his faith and how much he believed in what the teachings were and the ceremonies. So throughout the contact that this elder had with this man, one-on-one, he said that this man was very sorry for what he had done, that he felt very accountable for what he had done, and that's why he was trying to change his life as soon as he got to prison. And lastly, he really, really missed his kids. He loved his kids, and he wished that he could talk to them. He wished that he could see them. And yeah, but there was no letters, there was no phone calls, there was no visitors, there was nothing. And but this man just maintained his healing while he was there. And as much as he could say it, he always said he was so sorry for what he had done. And but he ended up serving 11 years of his 2 life sentences. He died of cancer at the Kingston Penitentiary. By all accounts, he was by himself. He had no family with him. And yeah. So the story goes, as the story goes, this elder had all this information. So this elder, after the man passed away, was attending a conference in Toronto. And while he was at that conference in Toronto, he saw somebody from our community, Wiki. And he approached that lady and he asked her, "Are you from Wikwemikong?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And so he says, "I have something to tell you." And it's really important that I tell you and you tell, possibly his family and possibly the community of, you know, what transpired, my contact with this man. So again, he told her everything I just told you about him being his helper, about how much he was sorry, about how much he was accountable, about how much he loved his children, about how much he missed his children, about how much connection he wanted with those children. And so anyway, the lady was very, very surprised because all the community members, without saying any names, I think there's community members listening that are, from that generation, they'll know who I'm talking about. But at the same time, so anyway, this lady brought this message back to the community. And it wasn't until the oldest son was at Prisoner's Justice Day, it wasn't long before that. It wasn't too long before that he heard this part of his dad's story, and it was a sweet pill to swallow, because had he had pressed and had he had known and had he not believed his caregivers in his CAS of preventing him from seeing his dad, that he would have probably had some good years with him despite him being in prison. So, that's what I took away from that Prisoner's Justice Day. And that's what I bring to what I do today as a GLADU aftercare worker and reintegration worker. I support our band members who are in federal custody right now, serving their sentences. I support our band members who are leaving federal custody, provincial custody, or any kind of incarceration. But having shared that story, one of my most important missions is to make sure that never happens again, at least while I'm working as in this position. That that connection to our community will never be severed, because they are, after all the people, the offenders. I don't like to call them that because they are people. They are our band members. They are, fathers. They are sons. They are grandfathers as well. Uncles, brothers. We can't forsake them. So, that's what I do. I provide connections to people who are incarcerated back to the community, and also thereafter to their families. And not only that, I give them access to elders as part of my work. So we do have a phone program going, because a lot of people who are in prison don't have. If you don't have any resources out here, as financial resources, or if you weren't well off out here, you ain't doing any better in prison. The most you can earn a day is $5.70 a day. That's top tier pay over there. That's like $5.70. And so again, one of the reasons we provide a phone program and we provide our band members with the means to phone our office or phone the elders is because they don't have the means to pay for it as well. So we do provide that connection. We do also pay for that connection as well. It's not a lot, but it is enough for them to make that connection back to our community. Now, if we speak about disconnecting, I'm also a part of my work, and my mission is to reduce the over representation of Indigenous people in the prison population. That's my overall mission, and that's why we got the funding for this work. So again, with that being my mission, I one of the things that I always try to promote is culture. And some of the reasons that there's recidivism, and if people don't know what recidivism is, it's reoffending. And so anyway, when we talk about recidivism, Three of the main mitigating factors for indigenous people who are cycling through the prison system and recidivism is disconnection. Um, that sense of belonging is gone after they've been disconnected. And once they lose their sense of belonging, they lose their sense of identity. And so, through my work and through my own journey of being in the prison system and knowing how it feels to be disconnected from your community, I I do find a lot of purpose in trying to connect people, back to their community, especially not just the culture, but our community as a whole. To let them know that you aren't forsaken. There are people here that care and that will support you while you're there. And I just don't support the men in there. I've made contact with their families on this side as well. And I make it also part of my job to always be that friendly face that always says hi to them, that will update them on their loved ones' progress, or where they are in their sentence or how they're doing. You know, because again, a lot of them can't accept collect calls, so I am sometimes the person who updates their loved ones. Oh yeah. Again, through my work, um, I found my purpose. For years of my life, I didn't know what my purpose was. For years of my life, having been cycling through the criminal justice system, as a result of my addictions and my dysfunctional behavior, there was a time when I would have probably blamed all that on my dad being in a residential school, but that's not the case. After I learned my history, I realized it wasn't because my dad went to residential school that I ended up in prison. I realized that it was all the poor choices that I made. But again, those poor choices were influenced by that fact. And, and if we talk about violence, or we talk about crime, if we talk about that, um, you know, that was just, I guess, a symptom of residential school. And, I grew up in a household where I was, my dad was a teacher after he attended residential school. He went to UFT, and he became a teacher in his community. So he had a full time job in a community that was only 800 then, Sandy Lake, Ontario. It's an isolated fly-in reserve in northwestern Ontario, and it was really hard pressed to get work there. But my dad had a job, and I was a bit more well off than the other kids and stuff like that. So I did have you know a little bit more than them. But one thing that I did experience within the household was violence, and that occurred every time my dad drank. And the recipient of that violence usually was my mom. And one of the things that I always told myself as a young teenager was that I was never going to be like my dad. But as life goes, and as the poor choices that I made and the resentment that I held on to, I ended up being exactly like him. Um, and that's where I was, and on that all that behavior led me down those roads in conflict with the criminal justice system. And while I was away and doing that stuff, like I mentioned earlier, I never really felt connected to anywhere else that I lived before I started until I returned to Wikwemikong. Um, there was this one time I was in Stony Mountain Penitentiary in Manitoba, and I was in a sweat lodge there, and they use lava rocks there. There's fields of lava over there, and they use big chunks of lava rocks in the sweat. So the sweat was really, really, really hot, and I was always taught I was always taught that if it's really, really hot, that, try to meditate and try to think of somewhere else you'd rather be than that moment in time. And I started to think really, really hard. And I thought, and I really didn't know, like, so I didn't think of a nice hot beach, or I didn't think of like anything like that. I just thought like I was clicking my shoes, like on the Wizard of Oz. Yeah, yeah, But anyway, so as I was thinking that, all of a sudden I had this, and this is an experience, and I'm sure other people who've been in the sweat may have had similar experiences. I had an out of body experience. I was sitting in the sweat, suffering, but all of a, the next thing I recall is that I was floating in what was my physical home before I went to prison, because I had to sell that house because I went to prison, so I lost that home. But I was in the physical home that I had just before I went there. And but when I was looking at the room, it was daylight because there were sheer curtains there, like white sheer curtains, but you could see the sunshine shining onto the floor, and there was no furniture at all. And when I looked at the sunshine on the floor, I could hear kids playing. I could hear their voices, but I couldn't see them. But I could hear them. And just when I heard them, it felt really wrong. I felt really wrong to be there. That's the feeling I had, because it felt like I'd maybe entered the place without permission or something like that. That's the only thing I could relate it with, is that I wasn't in there without permission, And so anyway, I came to, and the door opened to the sweat, and when it opened, I started crying right away, and I didn't know why I was crying. I just started crying uncontrollably, and I crawled out of the sweat crying, and I was bawling my eyes out. And the elder who was running the sweat came to me not long after I was out of the sweat, and he said, uh, "You went somewhere, did you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know." And so he told me, well, he asked me, like, what did you see? And I told him what I saw. But I told him it felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like it felt like I broke into the place, and that I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't my place. And then he told me, well, he asked again. He asked. He said, "Jonathan," he said, "tell me about like how it was for you as a child. Did you move around a lot?" And I said, "Yeah. As a matter of fact, I after my mom and dad, divorced and separated, I moved around quite a bit. I moved in every little town. My mom was an actress. She actually worked in places like this as well. She did theater. She worked for this theater troupe up in Sullicote, Ontario. I think it was called Northern Delights. I remember she used to work with Graham Greene, Thompson Highway. Those were people that she worked with. And Shirley Chichu was up there too. You know, and so I did move around a lot. And my mom was very ambitious with her acting, and she had to go to Denmark for almost 6 months to go to a acting school in Denmark with some Inuit people. And and during those times, she would leave me down here in Wiki. But when she'd come back, we'd have to move back to Sulcode. And so anyway, so I moved all over the place, but I never really felt like any place was home. And that's what I told that elder. And so that elder told me, finally he told me, he said, that place you went to is your physical home. And it's not your home anymore. And, what you got to find, Jonathan, is you got to find your home in your heart here. Because you can live anywhere as long as you find your home in your heart. And if you feel comfortable with your home and your heart, then that's, you know, like he said, it could live anywhere. But that's what I took away from that experience. But when I got back to Wiki in 2015, after my prison sentence, and after things started to flourish and prosper for me, um, I know where I belong now. I belong in Wakwemekong, because Wakwemekong is my home, and because Wakwemekong is also a mother to us all, and if we allow her to heal us, make us better, she will. Because there's a lot of services in Wakwemekong that people can connect to. There's a lot of people that they can connect to provide them with that insight. Culturally based healing is also something that really, really helped me. I didn't attend any counseling. I did attend some rehabs in the past. I don't want to say they didn't work, because everything that I learned during those times I use today. So it wasn't in vain, though didn't may have used after those rehab stints. But I do carry that knowledge today from those times that I deemed as a failure of mine in the past. But I don't see them as a failure anymore. I see them as, well, a necessary step I needed to take to get here, to where I am talking to all of you here today. And again, finding my purpose within the justice field. So I do have a lot more that I do for our community members that are not just in prison, but that are also in conflict with the criminal justice system. We do have sacred fires, community wellness fires that are lit every month. I am very involved in that. Um, I'm more in the background than, I'm not watching the fires, but I am scheduling all the guys, and I do like to use it for some of the men and women that I work with. And I can honestly say the Sacred Fires, since we've started one consistently in March, since March, um, I can honestly say that I've seen it help. I've seen it help people. And I wish I could say it helped all of the people that were firekeeping. But I've been very fortunate to see the fire, you know be stoked in other people because of that sacred fire. And I've seen people who are grieving, who are starting to process it because of that access to that fire. I've seen people who were seeking sobriety, and probably didn't have their voice because they felt like, you know, stigmatized because of that addiction and stuff like that. But I've seen people at that fire get their voice, and then start to find that healing in their own, you know, addictions or grief. It's not always addictions, but that's just a symptom of trauma too. So I've seen this firsthand, and it's not something that that a lot of people see. You know, but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at about providing that connection for people. And not only do I provide a sacred not only am I involved in the sacred fire, I don't provide that. That's a community effort. So for all the community organizations involved in that fire, Nishin. But as part of my Gladu aftercare program, we do also have programming there. And we have a goal setting program that's 4 sessions. Embedded in the program are medicine wheel teachings. So part of the doorway concept is, so we in our the first session is the physical doorway. So part of this, the concept is, in order for us, if our goal is on this side of the doorway, and we're on this side, in order for us to walk through that door, we have to leave a bit of our old self behind on this side of it. Because if we try to carry that old stuff with us, uh, so I used to make them. I always use an example of. I remember when I got a job, I had to do a drug test to pass the job, and I cleaned up to get the job. But after I got the job, I started using drugs again, thinking that I could be functional and do that job while still using drugs. But guess what happened? I lost that job because of the drugs, because I couldn't make it to work, or I was, stuff like that. So that's just an example. So if we're walking through that physical doorway, sometimes we gotta leave something behind physically. So sometimes people say it's a physical addiction. Some people say they're attached to a physical person. That's probably bringing them down, and that's probably the second biggest one, is that people need to let go of a person. And the third one is like time. I find that people are saying that they never have enough time. And I always ask the question too, do you think time is a physical thing? And a lot of the community members and a lot of the people within who haven't been to prison always say no. But the people who have been to prison or who have been incarcerated say yes, it is a physical thing. Because when you go to prison, you're on a time clock, and there's a time limit there. There's the time you got to be there. For them, it's a very physical thing. So, you know, so again, when we go to a mental doorway, another thing we need to let go of is our fear of failure, fear of success. Some of us have low self-esteem. You know, and yeah, and our emotional doorway is always a big session because a lot of people are carrying a lot of resentment, regret. You know, they're not forgiving people. Maybe they're not forgiving themselves. You know, and that's always a big one to the. Really hard to let go of something emotionally, and we never ask anybody to let go of something spiritually, though, because when you're going through the spiritual doorway, I think what you need to let go of is your lack of faith, your lack of belief, and you have to believe. So you have to be humble to believe, and our last session's always about our resilience as well. And yeah. So anyway, if there was anything that I could I would like to say lastly is that you know there are connections in our community, and if you need some connections, I'm always available. For you people in Wakwamkong, if you see me, don't be shy. Say hi. I'm very approachable. Tell me your name. And to be honest, I probably won't remember your name the next time we meet, but you tell me your name again, and you know what? I will get it. Okay? So if I call you Hey Bud or Hey, or it's probably because I don't remember your name. So, but anyway, um, yeah. So, any questions?
Chimigwech, Jonathan. Oh, those lots of different understanding that I haven't heard in my lifetime. Thank you for sharing all that experience, wisdom, and hope and connection of connecting back to the community. You're doing great efforts for Kumakong and everyone in general. So, Chimigwech, if there's no questions, and I'd just like to say Chimigwech on behalf of Debajehmujig and for our 6 Foot Festival for coming here and taking the time to share with us that you shared with us. It was very empowering.
All right. Thank you, Ashley Chimigwech. So one last thing I just want to say. It'll take just a few seconds. For those of you who are struggling, that are in conflict, One of the things that I did was be honest. When I thought about the grandfather teachings, truth was the one that stood out, and then honesty was the second. So I had to make honesty a truth in my life. And after I made honesty a truth in my life, love became a truth in my life. Humility became a truth in my life. Bravery became a truth in my life. And yeah, lastly, wisdom too, right? Yeah. So anyway, so just try to make your journey and your experience a strength and not your dysfunction, and make honesty a truth in your life. Chimmy wedge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chimigwech, we are now offline from the internet. Thank you, everybody. We'll be starting with Sanyo Zabana shortly. You could just grab a coffee or a drink. Or if you want to talk to Jonathan, he's here for a little bit.
Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away. To the groove and the light that flickers. We get lost in the crowd, it's getting thicker. We get away, get away from the drinks and chatter. Haven't said a word, but it doesn't matter. Feel the air get thinner. I'm standing in a blurry dream. No one else can see us. Live your life within the moment, moment. And don't go wait until the morning, morning. You never know when it is over, over. All that I know is we'll get older, older. So let us dance this night away. Feel the air get thinner. I'm standing in a blurry dream. No one else can see us. So let us dance this night away.
We'll be starting momentarily with Sunny Ozabane.
Ani Bojo Kinawea and all that neat stuff. Because I get real shy in front of cameras and things like that, and in front of people, I'm just going to do it like this.
Hey, Sunny, do you want us to go live or do you think we'll just go offline? How do you think it's going to go?
Well, we can try go live and see how it goes. And if I start getting into things that I shouldn't be getting into, we can cut them off live.
Okay.
Keep the people here.
Okay, just hold on then.
So I was working on growing a blue beard. Can you see me goodly up there, my face and everything? Because the wife always tells me I have to turn my hat around.
Alright, let's